And welcome back to the Sportsnaut interview. And today we are joined by our guest, Sean Pendergast, who is one of the hosts of Payne and Pendergast on Sports Radio 610 in Houston, which is the flagship station of the Houston Texans. And that is our topic of discussion today. We're going to be discussing the Texans and their 2-0 start and also their matchup this week with another 2-0 team, the Minnesota Vikings. But Sean, before we get into the matchup, I do want to ask you about a few other things in regards to the Texans. First of all, I want to ask you about Joe Mixon. I know he was injured in the game last week, returned, but didn't play a whole lot, didn't get many snaps or many carries in the game. And I know it's early in the week still, but what's the latest you're hearing on Joe Mixon's status and his availability for Sunday's matchup with the Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, they just finished up, they just finished up practice several minutes ago. So they just came off the practice field, and Joe Mixon did not practice today. So, that's the early sign. We'll see. Maybe he works his way to being limited by the end of the week. I would be surprised. Just the eye test on the actual ankle injury that he suffered in that Sunday night game looked pretty nasty. I was mildly surprised he tried to come back into the game. And a lot of times with those ankle injuries, the adrenaline's still flowing, so you give it a go. My guess is that thing hurt like crazy on Monday and Tuesday this week. So no practice for Joe Mixon. Dameon Pierce didn't practice either today, and Dameon missed the Bears game with a hamstring injury. So if the week continues to trend in that direction, we may see Cam Akers again, who ran really well on Sunday until he fumbled the ball inside the 5-yard line. We may get a look at British Brooks, who's an undrafted rookie free agent whose name is as badass as his running style. So he made the team out of training camp as an undrafted kid out of North Carolina, kind of a not tall, but big, burly kind of back who showed some things in training camp. So if you got any fantasy folks that are listening out there, just keep an eye on the Texans injury situation. Cam Akers and or British Brooks might be a pickup for this week if we don't see Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce.
All right, some good information there on the status of the running back position for the Texans. Now, Sean, you're on the radio every day. You talk to fans. I'm sure you guys take calls, and I'm sure you have a very good feel and pulse for the fan, the Houston Texans fan. What are they saying right now about this team? I mean, last year they got to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback, and I know going into this season, the expectations were really high for this team. They're off to a 2-0 start. What's the vibe like in the city? What are fans saying about this team and their potential for this year?
Super enthusiastic. I mean, just all kinds of hope. This is the most hope that this fan base has had in a long, long time, maybe even in the history of the team, just based on the level to which they view CJ Stroud and Demeco Ryans. This was a team that just 2 years ago, if you had told me 2 years ago that they'd be getting guys like Stefon Diggs and Danielle Hunter and Joe Mixon wanting to come to Houston, I would have said you were nuts. I mean, this franchise was where Carolina is right now, where, ownership's making mistakes and they're hiring the wrong people and they're ruining young players and this and that. They're going through coaches every year. The hiring of Demeco Ryans really stabilized things in January of last year. And the first season, as you point out, was just dynamite. It exceeded expectations. They won a playoff game. CJ Stroud looks to be a top 5 quarterback. It is massive enthusiasm. I saw a number today that through 2 weeks, the highest increase in local TV ratings for NFL football is here in Houston. 67% increase in TV ratings locally here in Houston for NFL football. The next closest market was at 10%. So it's not even close right now as far as where the increase in enthusiasm is as compared to other NFL cities. Now, look, it had a very low starting point probably, over the last couple of years compared to a year ago. So it's crazy just how quickly this thing has turned around.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the numbers with the Texans offense in preparation for this interview. And, there's a lot of mouths to feed there. You mentioned some of the guys they brought in this offseason, Diggs and Mixon. Yeah. They're loaded at wide receiver with Collins, Diggs, and Dell.
Yeah.
I guess what my question for you is, Diggs hasn't been heavily involved in the game plan, less than 40 yards in each of the first 2 games. I live in Western New York, so, I'm in Bills country out here. I know what Diggs, how he can be when he feels like he's not getting the ball enough. Is there any concern in your mind or within the building that there could be some discontent if maybe the ball isn't being spread around enough to some of these other guys.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I mean, there may be fans that are nervous about it. And I think if it continues to play out this way, where Diggs is getting 6 catches for 37 yards in every game, it'll feel a little like maybe there's a ticking time bomb sitting there. But I can tell you, like, our only experience with Diggs so far here was throughout the offseason training camp in these first couple weeks. He's been outstanding to deal with. He's been outstanding in the building. Now, again, that's also nothing that you're unfamiliar with. You know what I mean? Like, the first 2 years, everywhere he goes, things are just great. You know, it was that way when he was a young player in Minnesota. It was that way the first couple of years in Buffalo. And the thing with Diggs here is he's only on a 1-year deal. So, he's and that was through mutual agreement between both parties. They ripped up the last 3 years of his contract that he had with the Bills and essentially took all of his guaranteed money, shoved it into this year. And now it's a contract year, which I think is good for both sides. You know, it doesn't keep the Texans on the hook for too long. If it's not working out for Diggs, it's a chance to prove himself and maybe get paid a little more than was in his contract before. He's been a great leader to the young players. He was voted a captain by his teammates. And there's been nothing these first 2 weeks. Probably helps that they're winning, right? But there's been nothing in these first 2 weeks that would indicate that Stefon Diggs is anything but love right now for the Houston Texans.
Well, that's good to hear, and I hope it continues for the sake of Texan fans. I do want to ask you, let's get into the matchup a little bit now with the Vikings. I think a lot of people are still on the fence whether or not this Vikings team is legit, even after the win versus the 49ers. I mean, it's hard to truly believe in this team with Sam Darnold as their starting quarterback, just from what we have seen in past years from Darnold. But I do want to ask you a couple of the specific matchups in this game. I want to start with the head coaching matchup. I think this is a good matchup with head coaches. You have 2 young coaches, one an offensive-minded guy, one more defensive-minded. Both have had success early on in their careers. Is there anyone that you think you give an edge to here in this game?
Yeah, it's a great matchup, and you may be going here next, but the matchup of the other coordinators too, offense, defense, Slowick and Brian Flores is great. This is as good a coaching chess match game as there is on the docket for this weekend. As far as Demeco and Kevin O'Connell go, it's the advantage. I still don't totally trust Sam Darnold. I'm not a huge Sam Darnold fan. Now, I know that Kevin O'Connell has did a great job with Kirk Cousins. When Kirk Cousins went down, he actually was getting wins out of Josh Dobbs. I think O'Connell is a fantastic coach. I think Demeco is a fantastic defensive coach. I would probably give the edge to Demeco just based on the talent level of the Texans defense. They went out and they got Azeez Al-Shire at that inside linebacker position. They got Daniil Hunter. They're a healthy defense right now, other than missing Christian Harris at linebacker. But Henry To'oTo'o, Harris's teammate at Alabama and now teammate with the Texans, has filled in just fine these first couple games. The secondary is playing really well for the Texans right now. Kamari Lassiter, the rookie they drafted out of Georgia in the second round at corner, has been everything they could have asked for, playing opposite Derek Stingley Jr., who to me is one of the top 5 corners. And I think Demeco may have the advantage of, one, he's gone against this offense for years and years and years. It's the same offense that the Texans play. And it's the same offense that obviously San Francisco played when Demeco was a defensive coordinator there. So the familiarity with the Kubiak-Shanahan system will be there. And I don't know, Demeco in the first week of the season against the Colts played kind of standard Demeco Ryans type defense. He doesn't blitz a whole lot. He likes to beat you with just the 4 guys up front. Against Caleb Williams this past week, he was banging that blitz button like it was a video game, man. And so I think there's maybe an element for Kevin O'Connell of maybe not knowing what to expect with Demeco with this specific group of players. So I give a small advantage to the Texans. Obviously the home field will be a big thing. On the other side for the Texans with CJ trying to deal with the noise and things like that, they dealt with that in Indianapolis the first week, and CJ was fantastic. So that coaching matchup, though, you're right, Evan, is going to be really, really fun to see. And, we'll see if Darnold can keep it going against what is, this will be 2 straight weeks against a really, really good defense. Last week beating San Francisco and now going against the Texans, who look like, kind of San Francisco light, with running the same stuff that the 49ers run.
Yeah, and both defenses getting after the quarterback right now, number 1 and number 2 in the league,
Yeah.
and team sacks. What about the matchup with Justin Jefferson, and however the Texans decide to try to attack him, whether it's, zone coverage, man coverage, double teaming him? I know Derek Stingley is a really good corner in this league, but how do you see that matchup playing out? Justin Jefferson presents a lot of problems for a lot of teams.
No doubt.
Can the Texans try to slow him down a little bit this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. That'll be that's the big question. Demeco, again, Demeco's got a certain style of defense that he plays, and there's certain things that he leans on. But for example, last year they played Cleveland in the regular season with Joe Flacco at quarterback, and Cleveland tore them up, and Amari Cooper had over 200 yards receiving in that game. They played a bunch of zone and threw, they trotted Amari to the side of the field that Stingley wasn't on, and he just ate them up. The two teams faced 3 weeks later in the postseason, and Demeco went out of character there and decided to have Derek Stingley Jr. follow Amari Cooper all over the field. And Amari Cooper went for like 40 yards on 3 catches, something like that. Since then, they've done more of that. They've let Stingley travel a little bit more. In week 1, they let Stingley travel a little bit with, when it was the Colts. I'm hoping, and then this past week, they had Stingley traveling with DJ Moore, and he made DJ Moore tap out by the end of that game. Stingley was fantastic in that game. I hope that they let Stingley travel with Justin Jefferson, just because we've seen the practice footage of these two going against each other back at LSU. These are two guys that have a history with one another. So I'm really hopeful that Demeco does that. There's a lot of firepower on this Minnesota team, and that, granted, a lot of it banged up. I mean, they finished that game without Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. But I would be surprised if Demeco just kind of laid back and let Justin Jefferson do his thing. You drafted Stingley 3rd overall for a reason. You started having him travel with number 1 receivers for a reason. There's no more number 1 receiver than Justin Jefferson in the NFL right now.
Sean Pendergast doing a great job for us here. Just one more before I let you run. What is the key to the game for the Texans? Who, is there an X factor? Is there a particular player, unit, the position group that you feel like the Texans can, use to take advantage of maybe a weakness that the Vikings may have?
Yeah, I think, to me, for the Texans, I'll do one on each side of the ball. To me, and they're probably very similar. I think getting Sam Darnold heated up, I think getting a pass rush on him and getting him flustered, getting the old Sam Darnold back that used to see ghosts when he was with the New York Jets before they traded him to Carolina, like that version. I don't know if that version's coming through the door, but everything that Demeco Ryans wants to do starts with the defensive line. So I think the ability to get heat on Sam Darnold and have him force him into a couple of mistakes. You have to force some mistakes, because if Kevin O'Connell is even or plus with the turnovers, he wins. That's what he does as a head coach. So I think you got to heat up Sam Darnold. I don't know if they use the blitz as frequently. Well, they won't. They're not going to blitz Sam Darnold as frequently. It's hard to blitz more frequently than they did on Caleb Williams last week. Darnold, at the very least, is a veteran who's seen some things. Caleb Williams is 2 games in and has played under center about as much as I have. So I think, but you got to get pressure on Darnold, even if it's with 4. And I think similarly on the other side of the ball, it's the offensive line for the Texans, the pass protection. As you mentioned, these are 2 teams that have caused a ton of havoc so far defensively for their opposition. So I think the keys are very similar on either side of the ball. A big key for the Texans, though, this goes back to the beginning of our conversation. What is the solution going to be to run the football? When they're able to run the football, the play action is already deadly, even with a poor running game in C.J. Stroud. When they have a good running game going and C.J. Stroud has play action, it is curtains for the other team. So if they can get something going on the ground, but who's that going to be, with all these injuries? And again, Minnesota, a little familiar with Cam Akers.
Yep.
So we'll see. Cam Akers may end up being the starting running back for this team. He was a Minnesota Viking this time a year ago.
Right. That's true. Well, it's going to be a great game, I'm sure, and I'm excited to watch it, and I'm sure you are as well. Sean Pendergast, everybody, you can catch him every morning, 6 to 10 a.m. Central Time. I believe that is out there in Houston. Payne and Pendergast, and Sean, we appreciate all your insight today and all the time you gave us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, enjoy the game, everybody. Thanks for having me, Evan.